Welcome to Cory's Conscious Living. Are you ready to meditate with Cory? Lay down and make yourself really comfortable. In a forest, far, far away in the middle of nowhere, Jeff and Daniel were off for a walk. They loved to walk in the forest. It was one of their favorite things, and they were very good friends. And because they both liked the forest so much, they normally got along really, really well because they had a lot in common. They'd been friends for quite some time. Jeff was 10 and Daniel was 11, and they'd been friends since they were 6, so that was a long time. Today was different though. Today they weren't getting on very well at all. They'd gone a different way in the forest than they normally go, expecting an adventure, something fun, something new to see. But really what happened was they got lost. And the more that they tried to find their way back to somewhere in the forest that they'd been before that looked familiar to them, the more they seemed to get lost. This, for the first time, was making Daniel and Jeff not very happy with each other. Jeff thought to get back to the normal tracks in the forest that they had to go north, and Daniel thought it was south. So as you can imagine, they had completely different ideas on which way was correct, and they weren't happy with each other at all. As they were walking, to be quite honest, in circles, around and around and around, all of a sudden, Jeff saw a purple glittery flower on the ground that they'd not noticed before. He bent down to the flower and examined it and looked at it really closely, and it was a really pretty flower. But he couldn't believe that he'd never seen this type of flower in the forest before. It was like it all of a sudden had magically appeared. Jeff said to Daniel, "Come here, come and have a look at this flower. Have you seen a flower like this before in the forest?" Daniel was like, "No." They both crouched down on the floor next to the flower to take a closer look. And all of a sudden, the flower started to speak. "You need to find the wizard. The wizard will help you find your way home," said the purple glittery flower. Both Daniel and Jeff looked at each other at the same time with really big, wide-open eyes, like, what on earth was that? Dan looked at Jeff and said, "Did I just hear that? Did you hear that? Are we going crazy, or did that purple glittery flower just talk to us both?" And Jeff was like, "No, I heard it too." They both looked at the flower again as if to say, "Okay, maybe we're hungry, maybe we're dying of thirst. Something's going on and we're starting to imagine things, like hallucinate or something. This is nuts." And they looked at the flower really close, and the center of the flower seemed to turn into like a little mouth that was talking to them. And the purple glittery flower said once again, "You need to find the wizard. The wizard will help you find your way home." Oh, it again, said Jeff. That's crazy, said Daniel. But while they were both absolutely horrified and at the same time very excited that they've found a purple glittery flower that was talking to them, it sunk in what the flower was saying. So Daniel said to the flower, "Where is the wizard? How do we find the wizard?" And the little mouth in the center of the flower said, "The wizard lives by the pond, deep in the middle of the forest. You'll find him there with all of his best friends. He's known as the Wizard of Frogs." said Jeff. "The Wizard of Frogs? Do you think she means the Wizard of Oz?" And Daniel said, "Did you say the Wizard of Frogs?" And he looked at Jeff as if to say, "Let's find out if that's what she really said." And the little flower said, "Yes, the Wizard of Frogs. He lives by the pond, deep in the middle of the forest." And then with that, her little tiny purple glittery petals started to close up and wrap around her as if she was going to sleep. No more questions. And then all of a sudden, she kind of just withered and fell to the ground and completely disappeared into the earth, like she'd never even been there in the first place. "Did you see that?" said Dan. And Jeff just nodded with his mouth open. "Do you think that was some kind of magic?" said Dan. And Jeff just nodded with his mouth open. I think so. I think it was. Now all we have to do is find the pond." And then all of a sudden, which was really, really strange, they heard ribbit, 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 all different types of frog noises, like they were right there by the pond already. They could hear the ribbit, 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 ribbit noises, so they decided to just walk towards them. And sure enough, through a clearing in the trees, there was a very big, pretty pond in the middle of this forest, which was weird and strange. Why was it even there? Both of them stood by the side of the pond, and off in the middle of the pond, towards the back, in a cove of reeds, was this giant lily pad floating. And in the middle of the giant lily pad, there was a wizard, sat in the lotus position with his legs in crisscross applesauce. He had both hands on either of his knees, as if he was meditating very seriously. His eyes were closed. Daniel. Hello? Excuse me? The wizard didn't respond at all. Daniel looked at Jeff as if to say, "Do you think he can hear us?" And Jeff went, "Hello, excuse me, can you hear us?" The wizard very slowly and calmly opened his eyes. "I've been expecting you both," he said. "Welcome. My name is the Wizard of Frogs." Dan kind of chuckled under his voice. He couldn't help himself. Jeff kind of elbowed him as if to say, "Stop laughing. He might not help us if we're laughing." "Well, we need to find our way home," said Jeff. "We've been walking around in this forest forever, and we thought we knew where we were going, and obviously we don't know where we're going, and He thinks we need to go one way, and I think we need to go another way. I think we need to go north, and Daniel thinks we need to go south, and I think he's wrong, and, I'm right, and I'm really annoyed with him, and yeah, how do we get home? Said Jeff. Patience, said the wizard. Take a look around. What do you see? And Jeff and Dan just looked around the pond and they saw everything that normally goes along with a pond. Water and green around the pond and lily pads and frogs. And then they noticed what the Wizard of Frogs was talking about. There was a lot of frogs. A lot of frogs. Hundreds of frogs. Everywhere. On the side of the bank. On little lily pads. They were surrounding him on his giant lily pad. There were frogs on his shoulders. They didn't notice before, but there was even a frog sat on top of his head, right there on top of his head. And they were all different types of frogs. Some of them were green. Some of them were orange and black. Some of them were greyish looking. Some of them were not frogs. They were toads, and they were very lumpy. They were all sorts, big ones, little ones, fat ones, tiny, tiny, tiny ones. They were frogs with really, really long webbed feet and webbed toes. There were so many frogs. Jeff said, sounds like a silly question, but why are you called Wizard of Frogs? Dan started again, and Jeff hit him really hard this time in the ribs. Stop laughing! The wizard, very slowly and calmly, looked at the boys and said, "These frogs are all my friends. I use them as medicine. Frog medicine is very powerful. And you, my friends, are very lucky because I have a frog for every single problem. You see that green frog over there? The really, really bright green frog? There's about 30 of them. Do you see them?" the wizard said. And the boys looked over to where he was motioning with his head. Those frogs, they will make you happy when you're sad. You see the black frog over there with the orange spots on it? He pointed in a different direction with his head. There was just one black frog with orange spots, very noticeable. The boys looked at that frog, and the wizard said, "Stay away from that frog. He's not supposed to be here. I don't know what he's doing here. He's very poisonous. Don't go near any frogs that are brightly coloured. They tend to be poisonous, boys." Jeff and Daniel looked at each other like, is this guy a little bit crazy? And then the wizard said, "You see those frogs over there? Those frogs, the blue frogs, they're good when you're stressed. I sense, because I'm a wizard, that you two boys are stressed and you're not getting along. The blue frogs will help you be calm once again. Blue is very calming, you know. Hence, the blue frogs are good when you're stressed." "Oh," said Jeff. "Well, what do we do? Do we talk to the frogs? Do we sit with the frogs? What do we do so that we're not stressed anymore, so that we can think straight and find our way home? Because it's been a long time, and our parents probably want us back for dinner by now, and they're going to start to get really worried." And Daniel just nodded because he was really hungry. Daniel's actually always hungry. His tummy is rumbling constantly all the time. So yes, Thinking about food was making him even more hungry, and he would like to go home for his dinner. "So," said Jeff, "what do we do with the blue frogs?" The wizard still sat in the lotus position, looking at them very calmly, said, "All you do is go over to the frogs and you say, 'Hello, could you rub off some of your calmness onto my stressedness and make it go away?'" The boys looked at each other as if to say, "Is that really what we're supposed to do? Do you think he's telling the truth? Or do you think he's just making stuff up?" Daniel said, "How can we trust him? What if he's a bit crazy and he's making it all up? I mean, he's a frog wizard, the wizard of frogs." And Jeff said, "Well, what other choice do we have? Stop laughing." Getting even more frustrated with his friend Daniel. They both made their way over to where the blue frogs were all gathered, and they sat down on the side of the pond and said, "Hello," and both of them said, "Hello," and then they said, "Would it be possible for you to rub off some of your calmness onto our stressedness so that we can think straight and find our way home?" All of the blue frogs were staring at them very intently, like they understood every word the boys were saying, which was really funny. Daniel wanted to laugh because there were like 30 frogs all staring at them with big froggy eyes. And then all of a sudden, Daniel almost lost it. He started laughing. The frogs jumped all over the boys. Jump, 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 all over them. All over the heads, all over the hands, all over the legs, all over the shoulders. And they were jumping, but at the same time they were tickling. They were tickling the boys' stress away. The boys were rolling around on the ground, laughing more than they'd laughed in a really long time. They couldn't stop laughing. And what was funny was the frogs even sounded as if the was laughing. They were laughing at the boys laughing. And the more that the boys laughed, the more stress went away. And the more that they laughed, the more that they actually felt relieved and calm. And then they looked at each other, and without even realizing at the same time, they both said sorry. Sorry for being grumpy, sorry for not listening to each other, and sorry for disagreeing with each other and just being stubborn. They both said sorry at the same time, and the frogs jumped off and all dispersed onto different lily pads and different places all around the pond. The boys pulled themselves together, sat up, took a deep breath, smiled at each other, and then looked back at the wizard, and the wizard had a big, giant smile on his face. He said, "I told you that the blue frogs could take your stress away." Daniel, who was a very big unbeliever of this whole situation, was now a believer, and he shouted while he was laughing, "Thank you so much, that was so much fun. Thank you. You really do have some amazing frogs here." Jeff just smiled. The boys said, "How can we repay you?" And the frog wizard, the wizard of frogs, just smiled and closed his eyes and went back into his meditation. The boys stood up, turned around, brushed off their clothes. They were covered in grass and dirt and things like that from rolling around being tickled. And they started walking away from the pond, and when they looked back, there was no pond. just trees. Daniel pulled a face as if to say, "What?" And Jeff just smiled and said, "Well, there's our path. There's our way home." Daniel looked, and sure enough, the path that they'd always walked on every time they'd gone in this forest was right there, waiting for them, as if they were never lost in the first place. There was no trace of the pond, no trace at all of frogs, no trace of the Wizard of Frogs, and no trace of the glittery purple flower that led them to the wizard in the first place. All they saw was the path that they knew that they'd been on many, many, many times before. Now, how cool is that? Okay, my friend, let's get comfortable and get sleepy. If you haven't done so already, close your eyes. It's time to imagine that you're laying on the forest floor and you're looking up at the sky through the trees, the big, tall, green trees. With your eyes closed, let your imagination create the forest all around you. You can have birds and trees and squirrels, all different wildlife if you want to. It's your imagination, so you can make the forest look however you want it to look. But you have to have your eyes closed so that you can focus with your inner sight. I'd like you to imagine that you're looking up at the sky and you can see the sun and the birds and the clouds. You start to let your body relax into the forest floor, which feels very soft. You're laid on a lot of soft, spongy leaves. Just let your body start to relax and get sleepy. Let your head and shoulders get heavy and start to rest into the leaves all over the ground. Imagine that you can smell the earth and the trees and the dew on the leaves, and it smells really fresh and clean, as if you're in the middle of a pine forest and you can smell the pine trees all around you. Just let your body relax deeper and deeper. Your feet and your legs and your arms get heavy. Imagine the relaxation rolling down over your arms, down to your elbows, and from your elbows down to your wrists, and then from your wrists all the way down to your fingertips. So your arms feel really, really heavy and sleepy and relaxed. Your body, your back, your tummy, all relax. Imagine your chest getting heavy and your heart slowing down and becoming really peaceful and quiet. Your whole body is peaceful and quiet. Your eyes, your face, your cheeks, your jaw, everything's sleepy and comfortable and quiet. Just let yourself completely relax into the ground and let your body soften and your bones soften. Just imagine as if you're melting just like an ice cube, completely relaxed into the ground. Sleepier and sleepier, heavier and heavier. Just go to sleep, my little friend, and I'll see you tomorrow for another meditation with Cory.